A single piece of paper, a flimsy airline ticket, is supposed to be a contract. For seat 1A in first class, it's a $10,000 promise of luxury. But for Maya Sterling, a 17-year-old black girl in a college hoodie, that promise was about to be torn up by prejudice. She held the golden ticket, but the flight attendant saw only the color of her skin. What that attendant didn't know, as she called security to have Maya forcibly removed, was that the name on the ticket, Sterling, wasn't just a name. It was the name that signed her paycheck. The Tom Bradley International Terminal at LAX was a sea of expensive noise. The frantic click-clack of roller bags on polished marble, the distant murmur of a dozen languages, and the omnipresent, sterile scent of recycled air and Cinnabon formed a chaotic symphony. Maya Sterling navigated it with the practiced ease of someone who had spent half her life in transit. At 17, she was already a seasoned traveler, though she rarely enjoyed the process. Today, she was flying Summit Airlines Flight 100, the flagship non-stop route from Los Angeles to New York's JFK. She kept her head down, the hood of her gray Stanford University sweatshirt pulled up, noise-cancelling headphones securely over her ears. She wasn't listening to music. She just preferred the insulated silence. She looked, by all appearances, like any other teenager. Jeans, worn-out sneakers, and a backpack slung over one shoulder. She deliberately avoided the trappings of wealth that her last name afforded her. Her father, Robert Sterling, always told her, "Money whispers, Maya. It doesn't shout." She preferred to be invisible, a preference that, she was learning, was a luxury rarely afforded to her. She skipped the Summit Sky Lounge, a place she knew was filled with braying salesmen and people who measured their worth in complimentary champagne. Instead, she sat near the crowded gate, 77B, observing. Boarding was about to begin. The gate agent, a woman in her late 40s with tightly wound blonde hair and a name tag that read Cynthia, called for pre-boarding. Then, she moved on to first class. "We now invite our first-class guests to board at this time through the blue carpet lane." Maya stood, pulling the strap of her backpack higher onto her shoulder. She joined the short queue of 3 other people, a man in a tailored Italian suit and an older couple dripping in quiet designer labels. When it was Maya's turn, she pulled out her phone to scan her digital boarding pass. Cynthia, the gate agent, didn't even look at the phone screen. Her eyes flicked from Maya's hoodie to her face and back to her hoodie. "Economy boarding hasn't started yet, honey," Cynthia said, her voice dripping with a saccharine condescension that Maya knew well. "I'm in first class," Maya said quietly, holding the phone out. The screen clearly read, "Sterling, Maya, seat 1A. Cynthia's eyes narrowed. She scanned the pass. The machine beeped green. Accepted. The agent's thinly plucked eyebrows shot up in surprise, quickly replaced by a tight, artificial smile. "Right this way, Miss Sterling," she said, putting a strange, mocking emphasis on the name. Maya ignored it. She'd faced this microdose of poison her whole life. The assumption that she was lost, that she was in the wrong place, that her very presence in a space of privilege was a clerical error. She walked down the long, carpeted jet bridge, the anticipation of a 5-hour flight settling over her. She just wanted to get to New York to see her father. The aircraft, a massive, gleaming Airbus A350, waited at the end. She stepped across the threshold, turning left into the hushed, beige and navy sanctuary of the first-class cabin. The air was different here. It smelled of expensive leather, subtle perfume, and the promise of hot towels. A junior flight attendant, a young woman named Chloe, gave her a brief, nervous smile and gestured vaguely toward the front. "Welcome aboard." Maya found her seat. 1A, the holy grail of airline seats. A self-contained suite with its own sliding door, a massive television screen, and enough legroom to host a small party. She slid her backpack into the overhead bin, shrugging off her hoodie to reveal a simple black t-shirt. She sat down, sinking into the plush leather, and finally let out a breath. She pulled out a dog-eared copy of The Aeneid, required reading for the classics program she was starting in the fall. She was so absorbed in the text, so relieved to be settled, that she didn't notice the approach of the cabin's senior purser. The woman moved with a stiff, practiced authority, her silver-grey hair pinned into a severe bun that looked like it could withstand a hurricane. Her uniform was immaculate, her lipstick a slash of severe red. Her name tag, pinned precisely over her heart, read, Barbara Vance. Barbara stopped at the entrance to Maya's suite, her posture rigid. She didn't say hello. She didn't offer a pre-departure beverage. She just stared. "Can I help you?" Barbara asked. It wasn't an offer of assistance. It was an accusation. Maya looked up, blinking. "Oh, no thank you. I'm fine." Barbara's smile was a thin, brittle thing that didn't touch her cold blue eyes. "I'm sure you are. But I'm afraid you're going to have to move. This seat is reserved." Maya frowned, confused. "I know. It's reserved for me. I'm Maya Sterling. Seat 1A. Barbara let out a small, sharp laugh, like a bark. "That's very unlikely. We have a problem with the passenger manifest. I'm going to have to ask you to wait in the galley while we sort this out." "Sort what out?" Maya asked, her voice remaining level, though a familiar knot of dread was tightening in her stomach. "Don't worry your pretty little head about it," Barbara said, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "We'll find your actual seat once the real first-class passengers have boarded." She gestured with a sharp flick of her wrist. "Now come along." This was new. This was no longer a microdose of poison. This was a direct, public challenge. And Maya Sterling, despite her desire to be invisible, was not her father's daughter for nothing. She would not be moved. "I think there's a misunderstanding," Maya said, her voice polite but firm. She held up her phone, the screen still glowing with the boarding pass. "My pass says 1A. My name is Maya Sterling. You can check your manifest." Barbara Vance's brittle smile faltered, replaced by a flash of genuine annoyance. In her 30 years with Summit Airlines, Barbara had cultivated her first-class cabin into her own personal fiefdom. She was the gatekeeper, the matriarch, the undisputed authority at 30,000 feet. She prided herself on being able to spot trouble a mile away. To her, trouble looked like passengers who didn't belong. It looked like upgraders who acted entitled, C-list celebrities demanding Evian for their lapdogs, and apparently black teenagers in college sweatshirts sitting in the most expensive seat on the plane. "Honey," Barbara said, leaning in, her voice dropping to a low, theatrical hiss. "I don't know what kind of app you used to make that, but I'm looking at the official manifest right here." She tapped a tablet she was holding. "And my manifest shows this seat is assigned to a Mr. R. Henderson, not a Maya Sterling." Maya's blood ran cold. A double booking? That was possible, but Barbara's immediate assumption was that she was the fraudulent one. "That's odd," Maya said slowly. "My booking was confirmed 3 weeks ago. Perhaps Mr. Henderson is the one with the error?" Barbara's expression hardened into granite. The audacity of this girl. "Mr. Henderson," Barbara said, drawing the name out, "is one of our platinum executive flyers. He flies this route twice a week. We know him." As if on cue, a man in his late 50s, florid-faced and carrying a briefcase that cost more than a used car, appeared behind Barbara. He was checking his gold Rolex. "Excuse me," he huffed, glancing at Maya in the seat. "Pardon me, purser, but I believe that's my seat." This was him. Mr. Henderson. Barbara Vance transformed instantly. Her severe expression melted into one of fawning, obsequious welcome. "Mr. Henderson, so wonderful to have you back on board with us. Yes, we were just clearing up a little confusion." She turned back to Maya, her face, once again, a mask of cold authority. "You see, this is the actual passenger for 1A. You need to vacate the suite immediately." Maya was stunned. This was happening. It was happening now. The cabin was filling up. Other passengers, the ones in 2B and 3D, were settling in, and they were beginning to watch. The quiet murmur of the cabin was punctuated by this tense, spotlighted drama. "Ma'am," Maya insisted, her voice rising slightly despite her best efforts, "I am not moving until you show me a manifest that proves I am not in this seat. My ticket is valid." "Your ticket is fraudulent," Barbara snapped, her patience gone. The mask was off. "You kids think you can just sneak past the gate and squat in a seat, hoping no one will notice." "Well, I've noticed." Mr. Henderson, to his credit, looked vaguely uncomfortable. "Now, look," he started, "if there's a mix-up—" "There is no mix-up, Mr. Henderson," Barbara interrupted, holding a placating hand toward him. "This person does not have a ticket for this cabin. I am handling it." She turned back to Maya, her eyes blazing. "I am going to ask you one more time to gather your things and leave. If you do not, I will be forced to call security and have you removed for trespassing." "Go ahead," Maya said. Her voice was quiet, but it was steel, the sterling steel. "Call them, because I am in the seat my ticket paid for, and I am not moving." Barbara's face turned a shade of mottled red. She had been defied, publicly, by a child. "Fine," she hissed. "Have it your way." She grabbed the intercom phone from the galley wall. "Chloe," she barked at the junior flight attendant, who was hovering near the galley curtain, wide-eyed with terror. "Get on the horn to airport security. Tell them we have a non-compliant passenger refusing to leave a first-class seat. Code 3. Chloe, the junior FA, looked as if she were about to be sick. Her eyes darted between Barbara's furious face and Maya's shocking, impossible calm. She fumbled for the phone. The man in seat 2B, a gentleman in his 60s with a kind face, leaned into the aisle. "Excuse me, purser," he called out, his voice a reasonable baritone. "My name is Arthur Evans. I couldn't help but overhear. The young lady showed you a valid boarding pass on her phone. You haven't even attempted to scan it. You just accused her. Shouldn't you verify before calling security on a paying customer?" Barbara spun around, her fury now directed at Mr. Evans. "Sir, this is a crew matter. It does not concern you. I must ask you to remain seated and silent, or I will have you removed for interfering with the duties of a flight crew." Mr. Evans recoiled, shocked into silence by her venom. Barbara turned back to Maya, a smirk of triumph on her face. The call had been made. The wheels were in motion. "Security will be here in 5 minutes. This is your last chance to walk off this plane with your dignity." Maya just looked at her. "And what about your dignity, Miss Vance?" The question hung in the air, sharp and heavy as a blade. Barbara's face contorted, but before she could reply, the sound of heavy boots echoed in the jet bridge. 2 uniformed LAX airport police officers were walking up the ramp. The show was about to begin. The arrival of the 2 officers, their faces stern and their hands resting near their utility belts, shifted the atmosphere in the cabin from tense drama to stark reality. The quiet chatter stopped. The clinking of glasses in the galley ceased. Every eye in the first-class cabin was fixed on seat 1A. "Miss Vance?" the lead officer, Officer O'Malley said, his voice a low rumble. "We got a call about a non-compliant passenger?" Barbara pointed a perfectly manicured finger at Maya, her expression one of vindicated martyrdom. "Officer, thank you for coming. This young woman, she snuck on. She refuses to leave seat 1A. She's created a fraudulent boarding pass and is holding up the entire flight. The actual passenger, Mr. Henderson, is waiting right here." Mr. Henderson looked like he wanted to be swallowed by the plush carpet. He hadn't signed up for this. He just wanted his Bloody Mary and a quick nap. Officer O'Malley looked at Maya. He saw a teenager in a sweatshirt, clutching a book. She didn't look like a hardened criminal. He sighed. These entitlement disputes were the worst. "Miss," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "I'm going to need you to come with us. We can sort this out on the jet bridge." "I'm not moving," Maya said. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a frantic bird in a cage. Her palms were sweating. She was terrified, but she was also incandescently angry. This was not a simple mistake. This was a public dissection, a humiliation based on a snap judgment. "I am a ticketed passenger. This woman is accusing me of fraud without a shred of evidence." "Ma'am," the second officer, Officer Diaz, chimed in, his patience clearly thinner. "The flight crew has a right to refuse service. If they want you off the plane, you get off the plane. We can argue about it at the gate. If you refuse, it becomes a federal offense. Do you understand?" The threat hung in the air, suffocating. Federal offense. "You're treating me like a criminal," Maya whispered, the steel in her voice finally cracking, replaced by a tremor of disbelief. "You are acting like one," Barbara snapped. "You are delaying 200 other passengers. You are costing this airline thousands of dollars a minute, all because you feel entitled to a seat you didn't pay for. Get out." Mr. Evans from 2B spoke up again, unable to help himself. "This is an outrage. Barbara, is it? You are a disgrace to that uniform. You haven't shown 1 ounce of professionalism. You've only shown prejudice." "Officers!" Barbara shrieked, pointing at Mr. Evans. "Him too! He's interfering!" Officer O'Malley shot Barbara a warning look. "Ma'am, let us handle this. 1 passenger at a time." He turned back to Maya. "Miss, this is the last time. Stand up, grab your bag and walk with us, or we will physically remove you." Maya looked at the faces around her. The pitying stares, the annoyed glances, the terrified face of the junior FA, Chloe, who was hiding in the galley, and the triumphant, hateful glare from Barbara Vance. She knew a losing battle when she saw one. She couldn't fight armed police. Slowly, deliberately, she closed her book. She placed it in her lap. She stood up. The 2 officers flanked her immediately, as if she might make a sudden, violent move. "My backpack is in the overhead," she said, her voice numb. Officer Diaz reached up, pulled down her simple JanSport backpack, and handed it to her. "Shameful," Mr. Evans muttered from his seat, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This way, miss," Officer O'Malley said, gesturing toward the open door. Barbara Vance stood aside, pressing herself against the galley wall to let them pass. As Maya walked by, Barbara leaned in and whispered, her voice for Maya's ears only. "You should have stayed in coach, where you belong." The word struck Maya harder than a physical blow. It was the confirmation. "The quiet part," said aloud. It wasn't about the manifest. It wasn't about Mr. Henderson. It was about her face, her hoodie, her place. Maya stopped. She turned and looked Barbara Vance directly in the eye. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The look she gave her was one of such profound, cold clarity that Barbara actually took a step back. It was a look that promised consequences. Then Maya turned and walked off the plane. The heavy door of the A350 thumped shut behind her, sealing her out. She was left on the chilly, echoing jet bridge, flanked by 2 police officers, her humiliation complete. The plane, with its leather seats and its prejudice, was preparing to leave without her. "Okay, miss," Officer O'Malley said, gesturing down the ramp toward the gate. "Let's go see what your story is." Maya slung her backpack over one shoulder. She took a deep breath, pushing down the tears of rage and shame. She pulled out her phone. "You're right," she said to the officer. "Let's sort this out." She didn't call the gate agent. She didn't call customer service. She scrolled through her contacts to Dad. She pressed the call button. 3,000 miles away, in a glass-walled office on the 50th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper, Robert Sterling, the founder, chairman, and CEO of Aero Group Holdings, the parent company of Summit Airlines, picked up his phone. "Maya Bean, you're supposed to be in the air. Everything all right?" Maya leaned against the cold wall of the jet bridge, the whine of the auxiliary power unit filling the silence. "Dad," she said, her voice shaking but clear, "we have a problem. I'm at LAX, Flight 100. Or I was. They just kicked me off." Back on the plane, the atmosphere was thick with residual tension. The first-class cabin door was sealed. The jet bridge, moments ago the scene of a humiliating eviction, was now just an empty tunnel. Mr. Henderson, the unwitting catalyst, was finally settling into seat 1A. He felt a pang of guilt, but it was quickly superseded by his desire for the flight to just get moving. He accepted a glass of champagne from the junior flight attendant, Chloe, who poured it with a trembling hand. Her face was pale, and she avoided making eye contact with anyone. Mr. Evans in 2B was fuming. He flagged down Chloe. "That was unbelievable, young lady. What is that purser's name?" I can't," Chloe stammered. "Please, sir, I have to prepare the cabin for takeoff." "You all should be ashamed," he said, loud enough for Barbara to hear. Barbara Vance, however, was impervious. She was bustling through the galley, her movements sharp and efficient, a small, tight smile of victory on her lips. She had faced down a challenger and won. She had protected the sanctity of her cabin. She had removed the problem. In her mind, she was the hero of the story. She had done her job. "Cabin crew, please prepare for departure." The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Barbara picked up the phone for the all-call. "Cabin secure," she announced, her voice crisp and professional. The A350 began its powerful pushback from the gate. In the terminal, Officer O'Malley and Officer Diaz were leading Maya back to the chaotic gate area. Cynthia, the gate agent, saw them coming, and her eyes widened. "Oh, Lord," Cynthia muttered. "What did she do now?" "Ma'am," Officer O'Malley said, addressing Cynthia. "This young lady was removed from Flight 100 at the purser's request. We need to verify her ticket status. The purser, a Miss Vance, claimed this passenger was fraudulent." Cynthia scoffed, crossing her arms. "Fraudulent? That's Barbara. Always dramatic. She's not fraudulent, officer. She's just confused. I told her economy hadn't boarded yet. Her pass scanned green, but it was clearly a mistake in the system." "A mistake?" Maya spoke up, her voice icy. "Your system accepted my valid ticket. Your purser accused me of faking it and called you. Your purser whispered racial slurs at me as I was forced off the plane." Cynthia's condescending demeanor evaporated, replaced by a defensive scowl. "Now you watch your mouth, young lady. Nobody said anything about race, and Barbara Vance would never. She's our most senior employee. If she said you were a problem, you were a problem. Now I can try to get you on the 9 p.m. red-eye." In coach. The utter lack of accountability, the wall of denial. It staggered Maya. It was at that precise moment that Cynthia's desk phone began to ring. It wasn't a normal ring. It was a series of sharp, frantic, internal rings. At the same time, her walkie-talkie crackled to life. "Gate 77B, this is operations. Gate 77B, respond." Cynthia, annoyed, snatched up the phone. "Gate 77, Cynthia speaking." The voice on the other end was not calm. It was Mark Davidson, the LAX shift director for Summit Airlines. He was, in effect, the boss of the entire airport operation. "Cynthia, what the hell is going on at your gate? Flight 100 just pushed back. Where is Maya Sterling?" Cynthia was taken aback by his tone. She's right here, Mark, with security. Barbara had her removed. There was a double booking with Mr. Henderson, and she was non-compliant and— "Get that plane back to the gate," Mark yelled, cutting her off. The sound was so loud, everyone, including the officers, could hear it. "I don't care if it's on the taxiway. Get it back. Now." "What? Mark, I can't do that. It's already under ground control. For one passenger. Who are you?" "Cynthia, shut up and listen," Mark roared. "That is not one passenger. That is Maya Sterling, as in Robert Sterling, as in the man who owns this god-forsaken airline. You call the tower, you declare a ground stop, you tell them it's a security manifest error. You get that. Plane. Back. Now." A profound, echoing silence filled the gate area. Officer O'Malley and Officer Diaz exchanged a look of pure, unadulterated horror. Cynthia's face had gone the color of drywall. Her hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold the receiver. He owns... She looked at Maya. She looked at the Stanford hoodie, the simple backpack, the young black face that was now watching her, not with triumph, but with a deep, weary sadness. "Oh my God," Cynthia whispered, fumbling for the radio to the cockpit. "Flight 100, this is Gate 77. Return to the gate. I repeat, Summit 100, return to the gate. We have a critical security issue." On the plane, the passengers groaned. The captain's voice came on, sharp with annoyance. "Folks, apologies. We're getting a directive from the gate. We have to return. We'll let you know more when we do." The A350, which had been taxiing toward the runway, slowly stopped and began the long, ignominious trek back to Gate 77B. In the first-class cabin, Barbara Vance was furious. A return to gate? This was a procedural nightmare. It would ruin their on-time stats. It was all that girl's fault. She started prepping the cabin for the door opening, muttering curses under her breath. Mr. Evans watched her, a slow, curious smile spreading on his face. He had a feeling the second act of this play was about to begin. The silence in Robert Sterling's office was absolute. The view from the 50th floor was a breathtaking panorama of the New York City skyline, a testament to the empire he had built from nothing. Aerogroup Holdings was his life's work, and Summit Airlines was its crown jewel. He had built it on a promise of quality, luxury, and above all, respect. His daughter's words had shattered that silence. "They just kicked me off." Robert's knuckles were white on the receiver. He wasn't just a CEO, he was a father, and his 17-year-old daughter was 3,000 miles away, being treated like a criminal by his own staff. "Maya, are you safe right now?" he asked, his voice a low, controlled rumble. I'm at the gate, with 2 airport police officers. They're all staring at me. Dad, the flight attendant, she said I belonged in coach. The quiet bigotry, the casual cruelty of it lit a fuse in Robert Sterling that rarely burned. He ran his company with a cool, detached precision. But this was not business. This was family. "Maya, listen to me. Who is the purser?" Her name tag said, "Barbara Vance. The gate agent is Cynthia." "Okay." Robert swiveled in his chair, his other hand already flying across his desk keyboard. "Don't move. Don't say anything to them. I'm handling this. I'll call you right back." He hung up. His fingers didn't just type, they hammered. He pulled up the employee files for Vance, B, and Cynthia, L, at LAX. Found. He pulled up the live operations feed for Flight 100. Status, taxiing to runway. Not for long. His first call was to Mark Davidson, the LAX shift director. Mark picked up on the first ring. "Mr. Sterling, sir, what a surprise, Mark," Robert interrupted, his voice void of all pleasantry. "You have a 5-alarm fire. Flight 100. My daughter, Maya Sterling, was just forcibly removed from her paid first-class seat, 1A, by your purser, Barbara Vance, and your gate agent, Cynthia. She is currently detained at Gate 77B by LAX police." There was a sound of choked air on the other end of the line. Mark Davidson, a man paid to handle chaos, was speechless. "Mark, are you there?" "Yes, sir. My God, sir, I had no idea." "Get that plane back to the gate. I want that jet bridge reattached, and I want that aircraft door open. Second, you are to go to Gate 77B personally, find my daughter, and apologize to her on behalf of the entire company. You will then escort her back onto that plane and see to it that she is seated in 1A. Am I clear?" "Yes, Mr. Sterling, absolutely. I'm on my way right now. I'll run." "You do that, Mark. Run." Robert hung up. His work was not done. This wasn't just 2 bad apples. It was rot. It was the culture he paid his executives millions to maintain. His next call was to Diane Weston, the Senior Vice President of In-Flight Services. She was, effectively, Barbara Vance's boss's boss's boss. She was at a charity luncheon. "Diane," Robert said, his voice flat. "Robert, what a lovely surprise," she trilled. "Diane, I just had to call my LAX operations manager to stop Flight 100 on the taxiway. It seems your senior purser, Barbara Vance, just had my daughter arrested." The trilling stopped. "Robert, what?" "My daughter, Maya, a 17-year-old black girl, in a hoodie, in seat 1A. Your employee, Ms. Vance, accused her of fraud, refused to check the manifest, called her a squatter, and had her removed by police. How, Diane, does this happen on my airline?" "Robert, I'm horrified. I will launch a full investigation. I'll have Barbara suspended immediately. You'll do nothing," Robert said. "Because you're fired." "What? Robert, you can't be serious. Over one flight attendant's mistake. I've been here for 20 years. "You've been here 20 years, and you've fostered a culture where a senior employee feels empowered to publicly humiliate and eject a child from a plane based on the color of her skin. You've allowed a system where platinum executive status means more than a valid ticket. You failed, Diane. The rot stops with you. HR will be in touch. Goodbye." He hung up before she could reply. He leaned back in his chair, the fury still radiating off him in waves. He looked at the picture on his desk. A younger Maya, maybe 10 years old, sitting in the cockpit of a 747, wearing his captain's hat, grinning from ear to ear. He had built this company for her, and it had turned on her. He took a deep breath. His final call was back to Maya. She picked up immediately. "Dad? It's being handled, Maya Bean. The plane is returning to the gate. A manager named Mark Davidson is on his way to you. He will escort you back on." "Dad, you stopped the plane," she whispered, awed. "I would have turned it around mid-ocean, honey," he said, his voice softening for the first time. "Now, I want you to walk back onto that plane. I want you to hold your head high. You belong in that seat. You belong anywhere you want to be. What's going to happen to that woman? Barbara?" "That," Robert Sterling said, his voice turning to ice again, "is what we call hard karma. You just sit back and watch." Mark Davidson was not a young man, but he ran through the Tom Bradley International Terminal like a college athlete. He was overweight, his face was already slick with sweat, and his polyester suit was restricting his movement. But he didn't slow down. The CEO, the Robert Sterling, had called him personally. An image of his mortgage, his daughter's tuition, and his entire 25-year career flashed before his eyes. He skidded to a halt at Gate 77B, a wheezing, panicked mess. The scene was just as Robert had described. The gate agent, Cynthia, was pale and vibrating, whispering frantically into a radio. 2 LAX police officers were standing awkwardly, trying to look anywhere but at the girl in the hoodie. And then there was Maya. She was standing alone, leaning against a support pillar, phone in her hand, watching the scene with a chillingly calm expression. "Ms. Sterling," Mark panted, smoothing his tie. "Miss Maya Sterling." She nodded. "I'm Maya." Mark rushed over, his face a mask of profound, genuine apology. "Miss Sterling, I am Mark Davidson, the shift director for Summit. On behalf of everyone, I am so deeply sorry for what you just experienced. It is unacceptable, it is inexcusable, and it will be handled." Cynthia, the gate agent, looked at Mark and then at Maya, her brain finally connecting the dots. "Mark, she's his daughter, Cynthia," Mark snapped, his panic momentarily replaced by fury. "What did you do? I thought, Mr. Henderson." Cynthia stammered, tears welling in her eyes. "Barbara called from the plane. She said the girl was a problem." "Barbara is the problem! You are the problem!" Mark roared. He pointed at the agent. "You are relieved of duty. Hand me your badge. Go to HR. You're done." Cynthia let out a small sob, fumbling to unclip her airport ID. The 2 police officers, O'Malley and Diaz, now understood. They had just aided in the unlawful removal of the owner's daughter. "Sir," Officer O'Malley said, stepping toward Mark, "we were just responding to a crew complaint. We had no idea." Mark held up a hand. "You did your job, officer. I'll handle it from here." He turned his full attention back to Maya, his voice becoming gentle again. "Mr. Sterling, the aircraft is back at the gate. The door is opening as we speak. Please let me escort you back to your seat." Maya just nodded, slinging her backpack over her shoulder for the second time. They walked down the jet bridge. The heavy A350 door was wide open. Standing in the doorway, blocking the entrance, was Barbara Vance. Her arms were crossed, and she had a look of pure, unadulterated rage on her face. She saw Mark, and her expression shifted to one of confusion. "Mark, what is going on? Why did you call us back to the gate? I had to file 3 reports, and she said, jabbing a finger at Maya, "is not getting back on this plane. I have refused her passage. She is a security risk." Mark Davidson stopped 3 feet from her. He was still breathing hard, but his voice was lethally quiet. "Barbara," he said, "do you have any idea what you've just done?" "I've done my job," Barbara retorted. "I've protected this cabin from a trespasser who—" "A trespasser!" Mark interrupted. "Barbara, this is Maya Sterling." Barbara scoffed. "I don't care if her name is Queen Elizabeth. She's not on my manifest. Mr. Henderson is in 1A. "Check your manifest again, Barbara," Mark said, his voice dropping. "Check the full manifest. Who is listed as the primary on the booking? The PNR? The man who paid for the ticket?" Barbara, annoyed, fumbled with her tablet. She pulled up the passenger data for 1A. She scrolled past Maya's name to the payment information. Her eyes scanned the details. Ticket purchased by Aero Group corporate account. Passenger name, Sterling Maya. Linked corporate act holder, Sterling Robert, CEO. Barbara Vance's blood did not just run cold, it froze solid. The color drained from her face, leaving her lipstick a grotesque, garish slash against her ghost-white skin. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked from the tablet to Mark, and then to the 17-year-old girl she had mocked, humiliated, and ejected. "Do you know who Robert Sterling is, Barbara?" Mark asked, letting the question hang in the air. He's the CEO," Barbara whispered, her entire body trembling. "He is," Mark confirmed. "He's also her father, and he's on the phone. He'd like a word. But he's going to have to wait. Because right now, you are going to step aside. You are going to apologize to Ms. Sterling, and then you are going to pack your things. You're grounded, effective immediately." The cabin, which had been watching this new drama unfold, erupted in gasps. Mr. Evans in 2B let out a low whistle. "Well, I'll be," he said, a broad grin on his face. "Karma's a beautiful thing." Barbara looked at Maya, her eyes wide with a desperate, pathetic panic. Miss Sterling, I didn't know. It was a simple mistake." Maya just looked at her. She remembered the whisper. "Where you belong." "It wasn't a mistake," Maya said, her voice clear and carrying through the silent cabin. "It was a choice. You chose to believe I was a thief. You chose to humiliate me. You chose to be cruel, and now," she said, gesturing to Mark, "you have to live with that choice." She stepped past the frozen, horrified flight attendant. She walked down the aisle, past the staring passengers. She arrived at seat 1A, where Mr. Henderson was sitting, looking like he'd seen a ghost. "Excuse me," Maya said politely. "You're in my seat." "Yes, of course. My apologies, miss." Henderson scrambled to get up, grabbing his briefcase. I'll find the junior FA. I think my actual seat was 3B. My goodness. So sorry." Maya slid into the seat she had been forced to vacate. She put her backpack down. She picked up a copy of The Aeneid. Mark Davidson, meanwhile, was dealing with the purser. "Barbara. Galley. Now. Chloe," he called to the terrified junior FA. "You're in charge of the first-class cabin. Get these people settled. Get Mr. Henderson to 3B. Get Ms. Sterling anything she wants." "Yes, sir," Chloe squeaked, rushing forward. Barbara Vance, a 30-year veteran of the skies, was crying, her mascara running in black rivulets down her face. "Please, Mark." It was the gate agent. "Cynthia. She double-booked. She told me." "Cynthia's already been fired," Mark said coldly. "And you will be too. You had a manifest. You had a choice. You chose wrong." He gestured to the open door. "Get off the plane. Now." Barbara Vance, the woman who had, 30 minutes prior, reigned supreme in this cabin, did her own walk of shame. She grabbed her purse, her composure shattered, and stumbled off the A350, past the pitying looks of the passengers and crew. The jet bridge door thumped shut, for the second time. This time, for good. The rest of the flight was the quietest, most efficient 5 hours Maya had ever experienced. The junior flight attendant, Chloe, approached her with the reverence of a pilgrim. "Ms. Sterling," Chloe whispered, her eyes still red-rimmed. Can I get you anything? A drink? A meal? A blanket?" "I'm fine, Chloe," Maya said gently. "Water would be great. Thank you." I just want to say," Chloe stammered, wringing her hands. "I am so sorry. I saw what she was doing. I knew it was wrong. But she's Barbara. She writes our reviews. She could have had me fired. I was scared." Maya looked at the young woman, who couldn't have been more than 22. She saw the same fear she had seen in her own reflection in the terminal window. "I know," Maya said. "Being scared doesn't make it right. But I get it. Just next time, Be brave, even if it's hard. Yes, Mrs. Sterling. Thank you, Miss Sterling. Chloe rushed off to get the water. Halfway through the flight, Mr. Evans from 2B, now 2A, as the cabin had plenty of space, flagged Chloe down and handed her a business card. Please give this to Miss Sterling, and tell her her father should be very proud. Maya took the card. Arthur Evans, partner, Evans and Rosedale LLP, a major civil rights attorney. She smiled, a real, genuine smile for the first time that day. She tucked the card into her book. It was good to know allies existed. When the flight landed at JFK, the jet bridge was already connected. The captain came on the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize again for our delay out of Los Angeles. We will be asking all passengers to please remain seated. Ms. Maya Sterling, if you could please deplane first. Maya gathered her things, her face flushing. She hadn't asked for this. As she walked to the door, the passengers in first class, and many in the economy cabin who had heard the story, began to applaud. It started with Mr. Evans and spread. It was a soft, respectful applause, an acknowledgement of what she had endured. She stepped out of the aircraft and saw her father waiting for her. Robert Sterling wasn't flanked by security. He was just standing there, alone, his suit jacket off, his tie loosened. He looked like a dad. He opened his arms, and Maya fell into them, finally letting the tension of the day release. "You okay, Bean?" he murmured into her hair. "I am now," she said. "Good. Let's go home." As they walked, he put his arm around her. "By the way, Mark Davidson called. He gave me the full report." What happened?" Maya asked. "Well," Robert said, as they walked through the terminal, "the hard karma, as I believe I called it, has been delivered. Barbara Vance was terminated for cause before your plane even reached cruise altitude. Her 30-year career, her pension, her flight benefits, gone. The union can't even fight it. Her discriminatory comments, witnessed by Mr. Evans and whispered to you, constituted gross misconduct. She'll never work for a major airline again." "And Cynthia, the gate agent, fired," Robert said simply. "She wasn't just incompetent. She was an accomplice. She admitted to Mark she profiled you and deliberately double-booked 1A, assuming your ticket was the mistake, just to get Mr. Henderson, a regular, his preferred seat. She enabled Barbara's prejudice." "Wow," Maya said quietly. "And it doesn't stop there," Robert continued, his voice hardening. "I fired Diane Weston, the SVP of in-flight. This rot, this culture of us versus them, this belief that our employees can act as monarchs of the sky. It festered under her watch. She's gone." They reached the black car waiting for them at the curb. "What about Chloe?" Maya asked, climbing in. "The junior FA." Robert sighed. "She's been placed on mandatory leave. She'll have to undergo a full retraining in passenger advocacy and de-escalation. Honestly, I was on the fence about firing her too. Inaction in the face of injustice is participation, Maya." "I know," Maya said. "But she was terrified. She's young. She apologized. I think she deserves a second chance. Barbara and Cynthia, they enjoyed it. Chloe was just weak." Robert looked at his daughter, his pride evident. "That's a very generous assessment, and it's why you'll be a better leader than I am one day." "Fine. I'll have HR note your recommendation. Retraining. But she keeps her job." "And Mr. Evans?" Robert smiled. "Mr. Evans will be flying first class with Summit, free of charge, for the rest of his life. We need more customers like him." They sat in silence as the car sped toward Manhattan. Maya looked out the window at the city lights, the entire exhausting, humiliating day washing over her. She had been targeted, shamed, and ejected. But she had also stood her ground. She had used her voice, and the power behind it, to fight back. "It's not fair, though," she said, so quietly her father almost missed it. "What's not been?" "That it took you," she said, "that it took the CEO's daughter to make them see. What if I had been just Maya Sterling, a girl from Stanford? What if I didn't have you to call? They would have arrested me. I would be in a cell right now. That karma. It only worked because I'm your daughter." Robert Sterling was silent for a long time. He reached over and took her hand. "You're right," he said. "It's not fair. And that's the part we have to fix next. Tomorrow, I'm launching a company-wide, top-to-bottom audit of our bias training, customer service protocols, and complaint procedures. This isn't just about punishing Barbara. It's about making sure there are no more Barbaras. It's about building a company where a Maya Sterling from anywhere gets treated with the respect she deserves." He squeezed her hand. "But that's my job for tomorrow. Tonight, your job is to be my daughter. Let's go home. Your mother's making pasta." Maya leaned her head against his shoulder, the city lights blurring past the window. The reckoning was over. The hard work was just beginning. 6 months later, the atmosphere in the sterile, windowless conference room at Summit Airline's JFK training facility was thick with tension. This was not the usual breezy, required viewing HR module on customer synergy. This was different. Chloe sat in the third row, her back rigid. She still had her job, a fact that she thanked God for every morning. Maya Sterling's quiet word on her behalf had saved her career, but the mandatory leave and subsequent retraining had fundamentally humbled her. She was no longer the wide-eyed, terrified new hire. She was a woman who had been given a second chance, and she was determined not to waste it. All around her sat other flight attendants, seasoned pursers with 20-year pins, skeptical pilots, and ground crew managers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. They were all part of the first cohort of the Sterling Standard Initiative, the new, mandatory, company-wide bias and de-escalation program. The program was Robert Sterling's personal crusade. He had, as promised, unleashed a firestorm. He'd hired Mr. Arthur Evans's civil rights law firm as consultants, paying them a staggering fee to help design a curriculum that was less about corporate policy and more about human dignity. The scenarios they role-played were brutal and uncomfortably specific. A passenger in coach complains their comfort animal, a peacock, is necessary. How do you de-escalate? A platinum flyer demands you move a non-revenue passenger from a seat they want. What is the procedure? And the one that made Chloe's stomach clench. You witness a senior colleague aggressively profiling a passenger you believe is ticketed. What are your immediate, actionable steps? The air was full of defensive murmurs. This is ridiculous. We're not social workers. They're trying to get us fired. The program director, a sharp-suited woman from Mr. Evans's firm, stepped up to the podium. "I know this is difficult," she said, her voice cutting through the grumbling. "Change is uncomfortable. But the incident 6 months ago wasn't a mistake. It was a failure of culture, training, and simple human decency. It cost this company over $10 million in settlements and brand damage. But more than that, it cost us our integrity." She paused, letting the weight of that settle. "We have one final speaker today. This is the person who kick-started this entire initiative, not as a CEO, but as a customer. The customer we failed. Please welcome Maya Sterling." A shocked silence fell over the room. Chloe felt her heart leap into her throat. Maya Sterling walked onto the small stage. She was not the girl in the hoodie from the jet bridge. She wore a crisp blazer over a Stanford sweatshirt, her hair pulled back. She looked poised, confident, and utterly in command. She gripped the lectern, her eyes scanning the crowd of 100 employees. "Good afternoon," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it filled the room. 6 months ago, on Flight 100, I was in Seat 1A. Your senior purser, Barbara Vance, accused me of fraud. Your gate agent, Cynthia, had already assumed I was a mistake. And your security protocols, with the help of airport police, were used to forcibly remove me from a seat I had paid for. She didn't sound angry. She sounded disappointed. I've heard a lot of talk today about the incident, she continued. I'm sure you've all heard the rich girl version of the story. The boss's daughter who got a flight attendant fired. But I want to talk about what it felt like. I felt small. I felt ashamed. I felt like I was proven right. That no matter what I achieve, some people will only ever see a black kid in a place they don't think she belongs. She looked right at Chloe, a flicker of recognition in her eyes, though her expression remained neutral. And I looked for an ally. I looked at the other passengers. I looked at the junior flight attendant, and I saw fear. Fear of the person in charge. Fear of losing a job. Fear of getting involved. And I understood it. I really did. But it didn't help me. My father, she said, her voice gaining strength, can fire people. He can change handbooks. He can spend millions on training like this. But he cannot, from his office in Manhattan, force you to see the person in front of you as a person. Only you can do that. She stepped away from the lectern, walking closer to the front row. Barbara Vance and Cynthia were fired not just because they messed with the CEO's daughter. They were fired because they were caught. They were fired because their prejudice, which they had probably practiced for years, finally met a passenger who had the power to fight back. My question for you is, what happens when the next passenger doesn't have my last name? What happens when it's just a student, or an immigrant, or anyone who doesn't look like they belong in Seat 1A? She let the question hang. This training, it's just a start. The real test is at 30,000 feet. When you're tired, the passenger is rude, and your supervisor is watching. The Sterling Standard isn't a manual. It's a choice. To be brave, to be decent, to be better than you were yesterday. She finished. The room was utterly still. Then, slowly, in the third row, Chloe stood up. She started to clap. It was a single, sharp sound in the silence. Then Mr. Evans's partner stood. Then a gruff pilot in the back. Within seconds, the entire room was on its feet, the applause deafening. It wasn't the polite applause of a mandatory meeting. It was the sound of a reckoning, a genuine, hard-earned breakthrough. Maya nodded, a small, grateful smile touching her lips. She had not just been a victim. She had become an agent of change. The hard work wasn't just beginning. It was well underway. That right there is a story of prejudice and power. It's a shocking look at how bias can blind people to the truth, turning a $10,000 seat into a public courtroom. Maya Sterling was judged the second she walked to the gate, and the only thing that saved her was a phone call most of us could never make. But that one call triggered an avalanche of hard karma that didn't just punish one person. It took down the entire system that protected her. What did you think of Barbara Vance's downfall? Was it too harsh, or was it exactly the justice she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. These stories, where the powerful have to answer for their actions, are the ones we need to hear. If you were gripped by this story, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. We drop stories of drama, justice, and real-life karma every single week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next.